Not doing it will be catastrophic. We'll have 8 degrees. We'll be 8 degrees hotter in 10, not 10, but in 30 or 40 years. And basically none of the crops will grow. Most of the people will have died, and the rest of us will be cannibals. Civilization will have broken down. What the few people who are left will be living in a failed state like Somalia or Sudan, and living conditions will be intolerable. The droughts will be so bad there'll be no more corn growing. Not doing it is suicide. Just like dropping bombs on each other, nuclear weapons is suicide. So we've got to stop doing the two suicidal things, which are hanging on to our nuclear weapons
and global
and then after that we've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
so what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff. But if there were less people, they'd be using less stuff.
So we'll do the same format. It'll be 3 minutes, and then time for questions. We'll start with Mr. Chaitkin.
Anton Chaitkin. I'm a historian and the history editor for Executive Intelligence Review. President Obama has put in place a reform apparatus reviving the euthanasia of Hitler Germany in 1939 that began the genocide there. The apparatus here is to deny medical care to elderly, chronically ill, and poor people, and thus save, as the president says, $2 to $3 trillion by taking lives considered not worthy to be lived, as the Nazi doctors said. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel and other avowed cost cutters on this panel also lead a propaganda movement for euthanasia headquartered at the Hastings Center, of which Dr. Emanuel is a fellow. They shape public opinion and the medical profession to accept a death culture such as the Washington state law passed in November to let physicians help kill patients whose medical care is now rapidly being withdrawn in the universal health disaster. Dr. Emanuel's movement for bioethics and euthanasia and this council's purpose directly continue the eugenics movement that organized Hitler's killing of patients and then other costly and supposedly unworthy people. Dr. Emanuel wrote last October 12th that a crisis, war, and financial collapse would get the frightened public to accept the program. Hitler told Dr. Brandt in 1935 that the euthanasia program would have to wait until the war began to get the public to go along. Dr. Emanuel wrote last year that the Hippocratic Oath should be junked. Doctors should no longer just serve the needs of the patient. Hoche and Binding, the German eugenicists, exactly said the same thing to start the killing. You on the council are drawing up the procedures list to be used to deny care, which will kill millions if it goes ahead in the present world crash. You think perhaps the backing of powerful men, financiers, will shield you from accountability, but you are now in the spotlight. Disband this council and reverse the whole course of this Nazi revival now.
Thank you.
That was Anton Chaitkin, who is an author, historian and political activist with the LaRouche movement, speaking at a meeting of a healthcare panel held in 2009 related to the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Chaitkin put a lot of effort into linking the Obamacare proposals with the T4 euthanasia program of Nazi Germany. We live in a society which is dominated by the monetary market system. Our ability to take part in and be a part of society is determined by our ability to pay for things. However, we are also part of a society which is being transformed by advances in technology. In particular, automation and artificial intelligence. Increasingly, when you contact someone, for example, to pay a bill, arrange a service, or even to make a purchase online, you do not speak to a live person, but to an automated message. Quite often that automated message will direct you to a website, or even process a credit card transaction over the phone. This means there are fewer and fewer jobs available which involve human interaction, and fewer jobs which human beings can actually do. Yet everybody still needs an income, because they need to pay for things simply to live and take part in society. There is a tremendous social stigma associated with unemployment or underemployment, despite the fact that these two issues are affecting more and more people. For many people, finding work which pays enough even to guarantee a basic standard of living is increasingly a problem. There is a growth industry of food banks who provide food to those who cannot afford even food. These are not just people who have no work, but increasingly people who are working are finding themselves needing to be given donations of food. This is Liam Fox, a Conservative Member of Parliament. He's the disgraced former Secretary of State for Defense who breached ministerial code by letting Adam Werrity attend defense meetings, resigning in 2011 from David Cameron's cabinet. He's also the founder of Atlantic Bridge, a former charity which sought to establish social and political ties between the United States and Britain. This charity was forced to disband by the Charities Commission because its activities were deemed to be too close to the activities and functions of the Conservative Party. Please pay attention to this. It is important. It is important because he is now one of the team appointed by Theresa May to negotiate Brexit. He is the Secretary of State for International Trade and President of the Board of Trade. But Liam Fox is not the only figure who deserves scrutiny here. There is also Mansell Aylward. Professor Sir Mansell Aylward was linked to the disability denial scandal which affected Unum Provident, an insurance provider which was successfully sued in 40 states over disability denials claims. Mansell Aylward also worked for the Department of Work and Pensions, helping to shape both the work capability assessments and assessments for the personal independence payment which replaced the disability living allowance. His work was supported by Ian Duncan Smith, who was the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. As a result of these changes, many thousands of sick, disabled and mentally ill people were denied benefits and either died prematurely or committed suicide. There is evidence that even today such people are still dying and committing suicide through being unfairly denied benefits. Millions more sick and disabled people having been denied the benefits they're entitled to are forced to pay for care out of their own benefits. This has led to many of them falling into debt and experiencing food and fuel poverty. This is in addition to millions who have been incorrectly and unfairly assessed as fit for work and forced to claim job seekers allowance. Once on job seekers allowance, no allowances are made for disabilities or major illnesses. In a statement we received some time ago, we were informed by the Department of Work and Pensions that having a major illness or disability does not affect the ability of someone to work in any way. Then you have Paul Ryan, a Republican politician in the United States responsible for the healthcare reforms to replace the Affordable Care Act. Americans do not have universal health care, and these reforms are designed to scrap both Medicare and Medicaid, which paid for costs for those who either could not afford or who cannot get insurance. These new reforms effectively remove access to health care to an estimated 24 million Americans, including those with pre-existing conditions and disabilities. Not being able to pay debts from medical costs is the leading cost of bankruptcies and insolvency in the United States. It is also a dominant factor leading to foreclosures and evictions which cause homelessness. Then you have the conservative plans for social care and care of the elderly, where older people are required to contribute more to pay for the care up to and including selling off the property. One of the motivating factors of Britain's most prolific serial killer, Harold Shipman, the general practitioner who murdered at least 250 elderly women, was the desire to gain the material assets of his victims. Finally, there is the Naylor Review. The Naylor Review is a 46-page report based on a National Health Service study. It is also known as the Naylor Report. It was published at the end of March of this year by Sir Robert Naylor, former head of the NHS Trust which runs University College Hospital in London. It was commissioned by Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt, who asked him to look at what should be done with surplus National Health Service property in old buildings. Sir Robert in this report recommends selling around £2 billion worth of land and property to property developers to build 26,000 homes. This could reach £5 billion if extended to sites of higher value in London. The report suggests getting rid of inefficient buildings will allow the National Health Service to save £500 million a year in maintenance costs and also fund a backlog of repairs, estimated to be around £5 billion. The land and property in question is 5 million square metres, roughly the equivalent of an area 3 times the size of London's Hyde Park. Theresa May has already stated that if the Conservatives are re-elected they will back the proposals of the Naylor Report. Hospitals that don't sell off land will be punished through being denied access to funding. Hospitals will also be urged to sell off land fast to speed up sales of land and property. The government is offering to double the cost of the sale, paying the money to hospitals, not to private developers. This money, however, will only be offered for a limited period only. The suggested time frame is just 5 years. It's important to remember that hospitals are so lacking in funds, they will have little choice but to sell off the land and property. But this is not just about hospitals. It is also about clinics and doctors' surgeries. These proposals are also tied to sustainability and transformation plans. These are plans developed to deliver £22 billion of efficiency savings. This is a blueprint to completely privatize the National Health Service. Theresa May has spoken about opening up the National Health Service to insurance companies in the United States. This means that the future of healthcare in Britain could be the exact same as the current healthcare proposals in the United States, with millions of people not having access to health insurance and not having any way to get it. This is also tied to the full implementation of universal credit to all benefit claimants, including those who are working, by December of this year. There are other proposals being discussed by the Conservatives. One such proposal is extending the conditionality of universal credit to pensioners, so that older people will be expected to seek work as a condition of receiving a pension. Another proposal being discussed is finding a way of transforming universal credit into a repayable loan so that money paid to people for sickness and unemployment is eventually repaid. The suggested annual rate of interest is 8%. If this became policy, this would mean that people who receive benefits will have to repay all the benefits with 8% interest. We have every reason to believe that if the Conservatives win the general election, they fully intend to continue the transhumanist and eugenics agenda by denying access to healthcare and social care to those who are unable to pay or who are considered unworthy or unproductive. We cannot say whether this is linked to the eugenics program of Nazi Germany, but what we are sure about is that many people will die needlessly if these proposals go ahead.